Good afternoon, Margi. Welcome to Enaya Education.
Oh, good afternoon, Faranak. Lovely to be with you.
Lovely to have you with us today. I have been waiting for this day for a while. I know how busy you are, so thank you so much for giving us your time. Um,
My privilege. It's lovely to be with you too. I'm sorry it's taken so long for us to get around to this, but
oh,
not for want of wanting to be behind you, because I've been so excited to see how Inaya is developing and how you've put so much together. You've got lots of really great people behind you, and I'm right behind you too.
God bless you. It's my honor, it's my pleasure, and it's a blessing. Thank you so much. I just wanted to introduce you to the Inaya members, Inaya parents, Inaya teachers, Inaya members in general. Margi Orchard is a very experienced speech and language therapist. Um, she's also a well-known name in the world of inclusion and education in Dubai. It's an absolute honor to know her. She's also one of the governors of Al Salam School. And apart from that, one of the founders of All Children Included, and the founder and owner of the Learning Orchard, which I'm really hoping to be working very closely with. Maggie,
You
please tell
already are. You're one of our advisors on the board.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my honor. Thank you so much for having me on there. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we start our webinar, and that how later we'll talk about how we'll be collaborating together as well with regards to Inaya and Learning Orchard.
Thank you. Perhaps one of the best ways would be for me to say where we first met, because actually I came to Dubai in about 2013 originally.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was very little in inclusion
Yeah.
in Dubai. And it's been amazing to see the way things have grown, partly with the whole government approach to inclusion and everything.
Absolutely.
But when I came, there was so little, and parents were coming here and just didn't know where to turn. And so that was how All Children Included developed in the first place, with professionals who got together and said, oh, I know a child who needs this help. Can you help me? And we got a pool of people who we could call on. So I suppose in a way, that's what we're continuing now. But where I first met Faranak was actually a long time ago, 2017 or 18, I think you
Yes,
thought.
I think it was 2017. It was in MENA conference, the inclusion, what's it called? The Special Education Needs and Inclusion.
Senko, Senko, yes,
Oh, yes,
Senko
yes,
um,
yes. And
met.
I met you in one of the seminars. You were doing this fantastic seminar on selective mutism, which I have quite a lot of interest on, and I learned so much. And I could see your energy when you were delivering this seminar. I was like, oh my God, I love this lady, and she's just wonderful. You had so much knowledge, and I came back to school. Actually, I think I asked for your presentation from the organization. They sent it to me, and I presented it, to the staff. And I said, "Oh, there's a way of inviting you to our school so that we could share your knowledge." It was a fantastic experience for me, and I never thought I bumped in. I never thought I'd bumped into you again, and I did. I bumped into you one day, and we connected, and it was an
Connected.
honor. Yes, and I'm such a small world. I think it's
Yeah.
energy, because I really wanted to meet you, and suddenly I did, and it was just so away from everything. I'm really
But
happy with connecting.
we actually found that we had a lot in common, and we were
Yes,
aiming at the
yes,
same things. And that's why it's my privilege to be able to be part of Inaya, and
thank
to
you,
be able to feel that you can call on me and I can call on you for
thank
the sorts of children and the sorts of families who need help of
you.
one
Yes,
sort or another.
absolutely, and that's
Inaya
what we're here
provides one thing that I can't provide, and I provide the speech and language and communication aspects from my side. I started Learning Orchard because I felt the need from many parents here for having a concerted support for them that they could draw on
for.
for advice and for being able to talk through how to access support, how to get the right things for their child. And that's exactly where you come in, because a lot of what they need is not necessarily just from me, but it's from other professionals like yourself. And especially with children with speech and language difficulties, they so often get a speech and language assessment, and there's loads of recommendations from that, or a program or whatever. And I myself do assessments and do a program and think this is never going to go anywhere unless the child has regular input from somebody.
From professionals.
And that's where you've been able to start to work with me on this, isn't it?
Yes, I'm really, really honored to be working closely with you, supporting the children with your recommendations, because your valuable recommendations mean that we are going to the right, towards the right direction in supporting a child with language and speech and language difficulties. So we don't have the expertise. So your expertise will allow us to implement these strategies, whether it's our teachers or whether the child's LSA. We work very closely together to ensure that the child has this appropriate support in place. So that's where Enaya and Learning Orchard are collaborating together, and whether it's this one-to-one support, and
and it's the practice, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We've talked so often about making sure that the practice is embedded in their daily learning routines.
The learning routine, yes.
You do that as well in remedial teaching, but in speech and language, it's really important that these skills are learned by practice.
Absolutely.
So this is where I do feel that the children really benefit from a concerted approach.
Yes, and thank you so much for giving us all these strategies, because you have a world of knowledge, and we can't wait to work with you even closer, because our children that we are referred to sometimes do require expertise in advice and assessments for speech and language difficulties. So so far we've just we've started working together, and we're looking forward to working even further. So today, Margi, you've joined us to do a webinar for our members, but tell us more about the webinar that you'll be doing. Can I make you host?
Okay.
Wonderful, thank you. Easy. Right, thank you so much. We are ready for you, Margi, whenever you are. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm screen sharing okay now, aren't I?
Yes.
So what I want to talk today about is how to get your shy child to talk. And this is where I want to try and talk not about a diagnosis of something like selective mutism or autism or anything like that, but what we can do as parents to encourage our children with communication and to prevent things like selective mutism, because we've seen it so often in schools, and really it starts somewhere. And children aren't naturally selectively mute, but often what we do as parents and as early years educators is what makes the difference between whether they become selectively mute or whether they learn to communicate well. So what I'd like to do today is to think about what we can take away from this. I want you to try and think about and know why and when not to press your child to talk. I think often we as parents, because of our own sort of needs, press our children to talk in a way that perhaps isn't helpful for our children. So we'll talk about that a little more. I'd like you to be aware of when and how your child is talking, because it's not just the words that they're saying, it's their behavior, it's when they're, you can see physically sometimes that a child is really reacting to a situation, or when he's all being brash and naughty, even that's talking. So being aware of what your child is saying by their behavior as well as their actual speech. And then I'd like us to try and find at least one fun new way to get your child communicating if they're not very confident. So The silent circle is where selective mutism starts, and this is where I think we need to start. This is what I talk about in schools with nursery teachers and with FS and Key Stage 1 teachers. The silent circle is where selectively mute children start. And if we can prevent it at this stage, to be stopping this circle and being able to have a positive reaction, in fact, we shall manage to get our children talking and not getting into this situation. So we ask a child a question. So maybe your mum comes and she's meeting her grandchild and she asks her child, asks your child, okay, what's your name again? If she doesn't know it, or, oh, I saw that you were doing something very good at school. And then your child is feeling really shy because she hasn't seen her gran for months because it's been locked down and it's been really difficult. And she gets all shy and she doesn't want to talk and she hides behind your skirts. And so you then, the child's feeling very anxious, do you see? And the child avoids answering. And so you then rescue your child and say, oh yes, you were doing a really beautiful picture in school, weren't you? And she gives the answer to your mum. And so the child then doesn't feel pressured to talk, and the adults feel happy and you don't feel embarrassed as a mum, and Gran feels okay because she's got an answer, but then she looks askance at your daughter and sort of, what's the matter with her, as parents often do. And that's me at my stage, so I hope I won't be like that. But it's all negative reinforcement, and it means that your child next time, your child has a question from the gran, starts to immediately feel anxious, and so the circle starts, all right? So this is something that we can avoid right from the beginning, and I'll show you how. Okay, so it's the expectations. Alison Winchen is a lady who I trained with in UK, who is an expert in selective mutism, and it's the expectations of having to talk that makes a child, or makes me feel anxious. Even today, the expectation of having to talk on a video makes me anxious, but I've learned ways, I've learned strategies to overcome that. And children haven't learned that yet. So this is where we need to help them with it. So often in Dubai and many other countries now, the assumption is that actually if they're bilingual, maybe they'll be a bit quiet for a while, and maybe that's what's making them shy. So just thinking about bilingualism and the sort of stresses and the anxieties that a child might have coming into school, coming into a nursery or an FS, especially after all the lockdown and the coronavirus anxieties. They've perhaps not met very many people for months, and it may have been distance learning for them, and they're coming back into school. And so it isn't just a matter of bilingualism where there are social and cultural differences. It's not even just the things like eye contact, which for some cultures is so different, isn't it? You know, children in India and Pakistan certainly would never dare to look up at their parents or to look up at an adult or a teacher. But we expect that from Western children. We expect children to make eye contact. Physical contact, that'll be really difficult after all the times that we've had. So how much physical contact is appropriate or helpful for children? Some families just don't have a lot of hugging and kissing, but others have a lot. So getting used to that. The greetings and the respect in different families, different cultures, you can fill those gaps in yourself. And eating, even the food, the types of food that we have. Okay, I think in Dubai we've become pretty cosmopolitan, but it's different, isn't it? The way that children have their food at home, the way they eat, perhaps in many homes, and quite naturally, as I did when I was a child, you learn to eat with your fingers and you learn to eat appropriately. But in the West, children are taught to eat with their knife and fork and spoon. So even those cultural things are challenging for a child when they first start in school or when they're in a different setting. And then the religious customs and the respect for family beliefs, that's all different. So a shy child coming into school or into a new environment has to deal with all of these things, and it's challenging. It's challenging for us as adults, but just think about your little one who's got all the coronavirus things on top of all the other things, and they've got quite a lot to deal with. So be sympathetic and be gentle with your little ones, and let's find a way through. So selective mutism, I just wanted to talk about this for a moment and to give you an idea of how it is diagnosed, because it is actually diagnosed on the WHO, the World Health Organization, the ICD definitions of diseases, which sounds awful. I mean, it sounds as though selective mutism is quite a disease, and it becomes that. As a lot of things in our lives, in adults, we get a disease from things that perhaps didn't need to be. So for a child who has selective mutism, they have a marked and persistent fear of some of the things that we talked about, which may become really excessive. And we certainly would say that if a child is not talking at all in school for at least a month after starting school, we would worry about the child being selectively mute. You as a parent might not even see this problem because the child's chattering and talking and perhaps doesn't even have a problem with talking with his aunts and uncles and his fierce grandma and grandpa at home. But, you know, in school, the child is just not talking at all. And so we would look at the things that do actually predispose a child to have selective mutism. It is more common in females. That's an interesting point because most speech and language difficulties are actually more common in males. But for females, where I think we have the reputation of being the ones that do all the talking, don't we? Perhaps the social interaction thing is much more our thing than it is for boys. Boys are more factual and objective, and girls tend to have be the ones that are talking more. The incidence in UK, it's only about 1%, but in UAE, I have seen so many children with this problem. So I think that perhaps there are other factors like the environment, like the things I just spoke about, that mean that a lot of our children are becoming selectively mute because of the way that we deal with it. And this is what I'd like to talk about further now. So it's thought to evolve from the normal anxiety that children face onto all the things that actually become very, very stressful for children. And then social phobia and selective mutism are closely related. So children do have other things that they get very anxious about. Usually starts well before the age of 5. I've seen children of about 1.5 who had early signs of being selectively mute, and we've been able to stop that happening. And there's often a family history of anxiety disorders or phobias. So these are some of the things that, and I'm sure that you can fill in a lot of things. I'm sure that there are many other things that children get scared of. My son was scared of spiders. Children get worried about eating, especially eating in public or eating in a class setting. They may be very worried about changing their clothes for PE or for anything else, or for anybody else seeing them. They may be worried about going to the toilet, and that also can cause a lot of problems when children start school. And I'm sure you can think of many more if you think about your own child and the things that worry them. These can often be things that are linked with not wanting to talk as well. So when we talk about getting your child to talk, we don't need to think about these very much, although if you're interested, I will come back to these and talk with them if you really want to explore this a little bit more with me. But the things that we would look at in school, because it's usually in school that a child shows that they become selectively mute, is a range of communication skills. So from no communication at all, where a child is actually not able to make eye contact at all, is not able to even shake his head or nod his head, to right through to free communication. We've identified 10 levels. And those are the levels that we would work through in school with an older child who is identified as having selective mutism. And these are the things that we actually can avoid. We can avoid right from the level 1, because we can get a child to start communicating in lots of ways. We don't have to leave a child without any communication at all. And so I'm not going to focus a lot on those, because if you need help, then please do ask, and I'm sure that we can find ways to help you. Faranak will help me to find those solutions with you.
Absolutely.
The thing that I want to focus on today is what you can do as a parent, what you'd like to try and focus on to help your child. So pride skills is what we want. It's a good acronym, isn't it, to help us to remember. What I'd like us to try and focus on is helping us to look at how our child is interacting, how our child can be directed in his own interactions. Okay, so even if he's not talking, you can give lots of praise, and praise is one of the things that you don't have to praise him for being a good boy or being wonderful or being beautiful or being handsome. You know, those qualities are not what you want to praise. You want to praise what he does, how he tries, how he helps you, what he does to help his little brother, the things that he's actually doing that shows that he's doing something really effortful, really that goes outside of perhaps what he feels confident in doing. So praise your child, praise him for getting his shoes on well without you needing to help him. Praise him for going to get your bag for you when you didn't even ask. Okay, things like that. And reflection of what he does. Say, oh, I really like the way that you started that picture. You chose a good color for that. Okay, or, oh my goodness, you put your food really nicely in the middle of your plate and you're not making a mess. Well done. Things that you reflect on, things that you find that he's doing that you can actually talk back to him about, so that you're giving him words to use. You're talking about what he's doing. I think that we are going to do something really special today, because I've seen the way you started to do this, to get your book out and to choose the book that you really like best. So you're giving him language. It's an effort. I remember as a mum, I used to feel as though, oh, I never talk with other adults. I never have an adult conversation. And all I'm doing is talking to my kids, and they're not even answering. They don't have the language to answer me with. But actually what you're doing as a parent is so important, because the things that you say to your child in really simple ways about what they're doing is what's giving them the building blocks to learn how to communicate. So this is really important, even if it's tiring for you as a mum to always be talking with your child, to always be giving them that language. This is what we're good at as mums. So try and come out of yourself enough to be able to give your child that privilege of hearing what you say, of reflecting on what they're doing. Try and get time to imitate what they're doing, rather than you saying, come on, let's play with the Lego, let's make something great. Look at what they're doing already and join in with what they're doing. You know, if they're just playing with cars and they're running them up and down, start a game with them where you take another car and you say, oh, I like this car, it's red. It looks really shiny. I'm going to make this car go up the hill. Ooh, brum, brum. So you're actually joining in with the play, but not saying too much. I've said a lot already. Then get your child to join in and get him to say, oh, yeah, my car's red. What's your car? So you're getting an interaction with your child where they also join in. And it's a quite natural interaction then. It's not something where your child's doing something else and you come in and you ask lots of questions. You actually join in with what they're doing. And then you start describing what they're doing. So again, the language comes in. You can say, yes, like I said, oh, I've got a lovely red shiny car. You've got a big car, my goodness. Oh my goodness, what is it doing? And you can think about that. You are answering your own question then. What is it doing? I think it's going to go to a fire. I think that looks like a very special car. It's not just a car, is it? Oh my goodness, I think it's making a funny noise. Oh, I think it's going nee-no, nee-no. So you're describing the thing that the other child is doing, or that your child is doing, in a way that gives them still more language, sentences to use, models of questions, models of answers. And when your child starts talking, you can shut up because you can get your child saying, and you can get your child describing what they're doing. So the key of it all, the key of pride skills, is enjoyment. And that really should echo the praise, because actually when you praise a child, when you do all these things, when you interact with the child, it should be really fun. So don't make it hard work. It's got to be fun. Okay? When your child is really not wanting to, actually, this is probably us as well when we get up in the morning. And I know with my daughter, sometimes she comes out and she's grown up, but she's not 5 anymore. But she'll come out and she'll not want to say a single word. But usually, at least we do something like a high five, or she pats me on the back, or I give her a nudge. And these are all ways of saying good morning. We don't have to speak if we're not feeling like it. Your child doesn't have to say, hello, how are you this morning, if he doesn't feel like talking. There's lots of ways. You can do your high five. You can do what's this? A fist punch. You can hug if you just want to hug and not say anything. You can actually, as we often do online now with the distance learning, you can wave, or you can give a salute. You can shake hands. It's very formal. Or you can just do a thumbs up. There's lots of ways. I'm sure you can think of lots of other ways. And we've become very inventive with distance learning, haven't we? And when we meet each other now, the elbow nudge is one of the really standard ways of saying hello, isn't it? But give your child the chance to react to you in other ways other than just talking. Get your child oh dear, say that again. Get your shy child to talk. If your child's talking, then if he's talking really well and he's perhaps said something to your mum or your dad, and he's really done well with telling your parent what he's been doing at school, praise him. Say, I thought you did that really well. You were talking so nicely to Grandad. Reflect on what he said. Say, I liked what you were saying about the colours you were using in your picture. And then when he's playing, talk about what he's doing. Say, oh, I can see that you finished playing with your cars. You put them away really nicely. Ah, now you're wanting to play with the Lego. I wonder what you're going to make. So you're talking, you're giving him still the language that he can use. And use question end arounds. I've just used one now. I wonder what the Lego model you're going to make is going to look like. I wonder whether you're going to use all blue bricks today, because you liked all the blue bricks the other day. And play to their strengths. If you know that they're really good at doing something well, like making a tower, then say, I like that tower. You do those really nicely. I wonder if you can make a taller one today. Maybe you can make a taller one than mine. So you're giving that opportunity for them to develop and to stretch what they can do. The things that you don't want to do, if your child is just not talking, you don't want to say, oh, I think what you're meaning to say or talk about today is. So don't try and mind read, don't question them. So the sort of questions I'm using are rhetorical ones, and I give the answer as well. If they want to chip in, then you've given them that opportunity, you give them the pause. But don't start questioning them, because actually that will really make your shy child freeze up and he won't want to answer it. And especially when they get to teens, they often say, oh, for goodness sake, Mum, stop asking me questions. And don't tell him to talk. If he's shy, don't say, look, I know you're shy, but you've really got to talk. Everybody's got to talk. You really need to answer your granddad properly when he's asking you something. When you're in school, why aren't you talking? Why aren't you saying anything to your teacher? They told me that in school you just don't speak. So come on, I want to hear that you've talked to your teacher. Talk at least once today. Absolutely don't do that. Okay? And don't do any negative talking. Don't put them down when they're talking. If your child perhaps has a bit of a speech problem and he's not saying some of the sounds correctly, or he's not putting his sentences together properly, or he's using Urdu as well as English together, or whatever your language is, don't say, you can't talk like that. You've got to say it properly. Say it like this. Or you can't say you mustn't say to your child things like, oh, for goodness sake, can't you say that sound correctly? Listen to me. Now copy me. All this sort of negative approach and the showing disappointment will actually freeze your child up even more. So these things in red are things that you really need to avoid doing. Okay, try and focus on the green side and the really good, positive interactions that your child is doing if you watch for them. So just some more pointers, things like not pressuring your child to talk, not pushing him to talk with your parents. Now, I know this goes back to the circle. So if your parent is saying to your child, now come on, tell me what you did in school today, I want to hear everything, and your child really doesn't want to talk, rather than answering for him, say, oh, I'm sure he'll tell you that a little bit later. Maybe he can show you something that he's done. Let's just have a chance to say hello together and sit down together. I'm sure he'll talk later when he feels comfortable. Okay, so you're not answering for him. You're giving him the opportunity to feel more comfortable about talking. The focus on playing together rather than getting your child to play with something on his own. Focus on the game that you're doing. When both of you are looking together at something, it's much easier for your child to talk than when you've got your eyes on him saying, come on, now tell me about what you're doing. Because this eye contact is often very disturbing for a child and quite disconcerting even for us as adults, isn't it? Avoid the direct questions, as I've suggested. So instead of direct questions, you can say, oh, I wonder whether you would like to play today with the Lego or with the cars, or maybe you'd like to play with the water today. So give them a choice of things and help them to choose them for themselves, which makes it much more easy for a child to respond. Side by side, I've already talked about. Give your child a chance to talk quietly. So if he's feeling overwhelmed with lots of noise and lots of children around, and he'd talk more quietly and able to talk more quietly in a quiet place, then help him to be comfortable where he's talking. And also, if he seems to have been fine in talking with his granddad when you were in the park and it was easy because you'd got the ducks and you were feeding the ducks, or you were looking at the flowers, and you were talking together quite easily there. But when he comes back into the house and Granddad's sitting there and saying, okay, now you can tell me today what you did in school, and your child freezes up, then be aware that it's a very different situation, and don't force your child then to talk in a situation where he's feeling really pressured. Okay, think about yourself as well, because you also feel like that sometimes. And get comfortable with talking with one or two people before expecting him to talk with absolutely everybody. Okay, so next one. So some games that we can play, and I think this is nearly the end. Some games that we can play are guessing action picture animal charades, having a lot of fun doing actions and getting your child to think who it was, or getting your child to do an action and you guessing. So games that involve action as well as talking. Singing, there's so many fun games. And you know, in Dubai and in some of the schools where I've been doing training, I've been really surprised that teachers don't know songs like "There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, a hole. With what shall I mend it, dear Liza, dear Liza?" And then the other person, or the other, perhaps you can get to do this with dad and your child, and you and another child. So you give the answer with plasticine, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. So you give the answer. Okay, you can have lots of fun with games like that. An Old MacDonald's Farm, and all sorts of ones like these that you can sing together and get your child to respond in, because often singing is a good way to get your very shy child to start really communicating. Games of pairs, talking hide and seek. You hide something and you have to ask questions about, is it on top of the cupboard, or is it in the bottom drawer, or is it under the table? Talking treasure hunts, similarly, if you've hidden something in another room and it's a really special thing, like something your child really likes, you can talk about which room it's in, where it is in that room. Reading pairs, so your child reads one page and you read the next, or one sentence and you read the next. And then you can talk silly or sensible, so you can say things like, I think I'm going to put my hat on my feet. And you can get into gales of laughter with your child about this. It's absolutely hilarious, but it's often a really good way to get your child talking, because they laugh and because they have fun. So that's the sort of thing. And I think shaping games where you get the child to join in when you feel comfortable, like we start off taking an animal and we make the animal noise, and then the child says the name of the animal, or you can make a sentence about it. Okay, so, and circle time, these are things that you'd probably use in school, but you can also use these things in your home as well. So you pick up a picture and you put it in the right box. So whether it's going to be a box with food, or a box with animals, or a box with vehicles, and you have to put it up, pick a picture up and name it and put it in the right box. So those are just some ideas, but I think that's all we're going to stop on today. And if you want information further, if you'd like to try and think about what you're going to do with your shy child, I'd like you to just finish off by thinking about one of the games or strategies that perhaps you haven't used, or you haven't used for a long time, or something that maybe I've triggered an idea from in you for using with your shy child. I'm sure that actually there's lots of ways that we often get stuck, don't we, for ideas. So I hope that this has given you some suggestions and ideas that you can use.
Margie, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Amazing. And I think, you know, I could listen to you for a whole day, really. I really enjoyed your presentation. Very valuable information, and I'm sure that our viewers, our Enaya members, have also found it useful. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for
You're
your
very welcome.
time. And if anybody wants to contact Margi direct, I have actually, I'm not sure if you can see this on the chat, but Margi's website is margiorchard.com /learning orchard. And do you have your direct email, or can they just connect through
It's the same. It's Margi Orchard @gmail.com.
Yeah. Fantastic. What an honor.
Right.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for giving us your time. It was an
It's
absolute
my pleasure.
pleasure.
My pleasure, and look
And
forward to working with you a lot more.
me too, Margi. I'm really looking forward to working closely with you. And hopefully this is one of many webinars that you'll be doing this. It's so
Thank
much
you.
valuable knowledge that you're sharing with us. Thank you so much. Wishing you an amazing day.
Okay.
Thank
Salams.
you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.